It's 5:30, so we can get started. Welcome, everyone, and thanks for folks who are joining online. We're really glad that you're here participating in this discussion. Welcome. If folks haven't yet signed in, you're welcome to do that. The purpose of this discussion is to get information and share our input on two topics. The first being the acceptable community conduct ordinance that was passed by the select board, and the second, and which there will be a representative town meeting about. There's a proposal that 460 people, Brattleboro residents, signed to overturn that ordinance. That is happening on the 12th of this month. And then the second item is the budget, where there's the proposed budget right now includes a potential 22% increase in property taxes to fund the next fiscal year budget. And that will be happening, that representative town meeting is in March. But this is the time when the select board is finalizing the budget, and so this is the time when it'd be valuable to be able to talk about it. This is not the format of this. The idea is for it to be, we know we have BCTV here, but the idea is to have this be informal, to be able to actually have a conversation. We're focused on District 8 because District 9 had a similar meeting about the budget. This one is for people in District 8, and for town meeting representatives to be able to hear from people that they're representing, because figure it's easier to represent people when you actually talk to them. So with that, I'm gonna pass the mic over to
Could you introduce yourself?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm Isaac Evans Branson. I'm a resident of District 8.
Okay.
And actually, Gary is gonna give some welcome words here. Gary Stroud is the chair of District 8.
Well, I just want to thank everybody coming here in person and on Zoom to this very important topic that's coming up in our town, in our districts, dealing with the conduct ordinance and potential 22% increased property tax fund. Also that at this time that we're gonna be pretty much, giving, what it is that you need to know what's coming down and what it's all about, because the information is up here, as Isaac said. At this time, I guess, Isaac, we've already spoken about that, but we're gonna also have Christina, how do you pronounce your last name? Shayanye. And Daniel Cook as well speak in regards to the ordinance, and that is going to talk about the tax increase. I just want to let everyone to know to limit questions, Q&As will be later on, about 3 minutes if we have time, depending on how far we're into. And at the end, I will explain to everybody for the 12th how to go about signing up to be an RTM representative town meeting member as well too. But at this time, I'm going to pass it on to Christina.
Me?
I can just give a welcome folks who just joined. If you'd like to sign in, you can. We are going to start with a brief introduction of the, we'll talk about the ordinance first for the first half of the meeting, and then we'll talk about the budget the second half. The idea is to finish by 7. And if folks want to hang out a little while after and chat with each other, perhaps that's, as long as we don't get
I have to
kicked out.
walk up, so.
Oh, you have to walk up.
Not that long.
In the parking lot.
Yeah. In the nice, chilly, snowy snowstorm.
Yeah.
But we welcome. You can have a seat in the circle, please. The idea is that we'll have
2 weeks, including getting a deal through to fund the government on Capitol Hill.
we'll have
There we go.
Yes,
Wow, I see how Pat.
we'll have Daniel start by talking a little bit about the ordinance, what it is, how it came to be, and then Christina will share some thoughts about the ordinance, some concerns about the ordinance, and then we'll open it up for discussion. It's not going to be like at a select board meeting where you have your testimony for 2 or 3 minutes and then you get cut off. We're going to have it be a little bit more informal, but we're going to ask that folks we try to hear from everybody who wants to speak before someone speaks twice. And we want to prioritize folks from District 8 to make sure that you have a chance to speak first. Welcome, Spoon. Feel free to sign in and get settled. So we'll pass it over to, so that's the first part, and then we'll do the similar for about the budget.
Cool.
So,
Hi, I'm Daniel Quip. I'm the chair of the Brattleboro Select Board, and I'm your neighbor in District 8. I live on Moreland Avenue in a little white house on the corner. And so the way I feel about this opportunity here is like, I'm going to just provide some information. I'm not going to provide a lot of opinion, quite frankly. We have an opportunity next Thursday to debate and decide the fate of this ordinance. So my frame is, here is information. If you guys have questions, I will try to answer them, but depending on what kind of question it is, I may or may not be able to. So I was given 6 minutes, and I'm going to do my best to stick to it, but it might not happen. So the Acceptable Community Conduct Ordinance, I'm just going to walk through what's in it. So it derives its authority from the Charter, actually, and it's a civil ordinance within the meaning of Vermont state statute. I'm not a lawyer, I'm not going to go into that any further. The purpose of the ordinance as described is to establish boundaries on acceptable community conduct and enable an authorized representative of the town to issue a municipal ticket and/or notice against trespass and enforce that notice against an individual whose conduct is harmful, dangerous, illegal, or unreasonably disruptive, while recognizing the rights of individuals to engage in constitutionally protected activities on public or town-owned property at certain times, in certain places, and in certain manners. Further, this section empowers the town to police properties that have become high-response areas by exhibiting a notorious atmosphere of criminal and other unacceptable conduct so elevated as to endanger the common public health, safety, or welfare of a specific neighborhood or the town in general. That's what it's about. There's a bunch of definitions. I'm not going to get into them. You can read them at your leisure. And so this ordinance is effective in certain areas, like geographic areas in the town. So these are they. Certain areas or zones on public streets, sidewalks, parking areas, and town property. 1, to encourage a setting that is suitable for all ages without the need for parental guidance and without harmful behaviors for youth to see. These areas include the following: within 200 feet of the curtilage, like the edge or something, of any public or private school, youth club, and/or youth cultural organization. Within 200 feet of the curtilage of any public or private facilities that are frequented by youth under the age of 18 or other vulnerable populations as documented by the town manager's office. Public parks and parking lots, including but not limited to Pliny Park, Plaza Park, The Common, Derby Park, Preston Lot, Harmony Lot, Highgrove Lot. And then 2, to encourage a setting that promotes the handling of money without fear of theft or assault. These zones are located within 50 feet of ATMs, parking pay kiosks, vending machines, gas pumps, entrances to businesses that have a chronic problem with theft or assault of their customers as documented in the town manager's office. 3, to encourage a setting of public decorum and decency that is open, welcoming, and accessible to all members of the community. And these areas include the transportation center, the municipal center, the library, Gibson Aiken Center, the fire station, and other municipal or public facility premises that are documented in the town manager's office. So that's where it applies. And then these are behaviors that in those zones are prohibited and have like penalties attached to them. So they're in 3 classes. So this is class A. So the behaviors are possession, use, selling, or distribution of any illicit drug or drug paraphernalia. 2, activities or behaviors that may result in injury or harm to any other person. 3, directing a specific threat of physical harm against an individual or group of individuals. 4, engaging in sexual conduct or lewd behavior. 5, using town property, assets, or resources in a manner likely to cause personal injury or injury to other persons or property. And then there's also this category where if you have 3 Class B prohibited behaviors within 1 year, that's effectively a Class A behavior. Get into that later. Class B, so being publicly intoxicated, possessing an open or unsealed container which contains an alcoholic beverage, urination or defecation, destroying, abusing, or damaging town property, assets, or resources, or using them in a manner inconsistent with their intended use, engaging in conduct that unreasonably disrupts or interferes with the normal operations of the facility or park. There's more to that, but I'm not going to dive so deep. And then the final section is like 3 Class C behaviors in 1 year becomes a Class B behavior. And then Class C, failing to abide by posted town rules, failing to follow the reasonable direction of town staff related to a rule or policy. And so I've got 17 seconds left. How about that? Penalties. Class A penalties are a fine of $200 with a waiver fee of $100, meaning you can pay less, I believe, by paying promptly. A prompt pay discount, if you will. Chris Mays, don't quote that. And then, so that's a fine. You could also have a notice against trespass in these categories as well. Class B, $50 or a $25 waiver fee. Class C, $25 or a $10 waiver fee. And then trespasses could apply in any or all of those cases. Enforcement, so the first thing that happens with enforcement is a conversation between the individual that's exhibiting the behavior and the person that has the power to issue a ticket. If the conference doesn't lead to some kind of resolution, then there's a potential for a municipal ticket to be issued. Once that has happened, it could be a fine, it could be a trespass. I want to be careful to get this stuff correct at this point. Once a notice against trespass has been issued, unless the notice has been stayed by receipt of an appeal, so there's an appeal process, or the notice has been overturned by decision on appeal, a violation of the notice may be enforced pursuant to state statute, which is a criminal violation. There's a little more nuance to that, but I don't have time to dive into it. Appeals and waivers. So a person who receives a ticket could appeal in writing within 7 days of the issuance. At that time, they could request a waiver, so that's paying that lower amount of the fine. Waiver requests, so if they get a fine, they could ask for a waiver from the town manager or designee. Okay, there's more nuance to that. I don't have time to get into it. You should read it. Appeals, a person could write an appeal. There's no fee. The appeals go to the town manager's office. And then procedure-wise, there's a whole bunch of detail here around like a procedure for how that would go. So that is like the first part of the ordinance. The second part is about high response properties. I realize I've gone over time, and if you don't mind, I'm just going to keep going because I think it's important that people know what they're voting on. High response properties are defined as a property where the police department has been dispatched or caused to respond 4 or more times within the preceding 3-month period by someone other than the property owner or designee or landlord for any incident involving quality of life, safety, or a criminal offense not primarily domestic violence related, including but not limited to disturbing the peace, trespassing, assault, noise disturbance, disorderly conduct, harassment, citizen dispute, threatening behavior, intoxicated person, and drug-related activity. Or, number 2, the health officer, so that's the assistant fire chief, and the zoning administrator, which is Brian Bannon, collectively have received 4 or more valid complaints about the property within 3 months. At that point, the town manager or their designee may consider evidence and designate a property as a high response property. Designation may be stayed if the property owner demonstrates extenuating circumstances or agrees to enter into a management agreement with a timeline to address the underlying issues causing the responses. Failure to comply with the approved management agreement may result in property being designated as a high response property. There's a notification section here that explains how the property owner would be notified. And then if it is designated a high response property, they can potentially be on the hook for cost of public safety response, with a maximum ticket of $800 per offense or violation. And there's a waiver fee of that, which is 2/3 of the ticket amount. It's due in full within 30 days. And then there's a whole process for how that could then go further if that didn't happen. There's an appeal process within 7 days, goes through the town manager's office again. And that's the end of the ordinance.
Thanks, Danny.
You're welcome.
All right.
10
So,
minutes.
all right. So we're next gonna hear from Christina to hear some of the concerns about the ordinance that have been voiced, and then we'll open it up for discussion.
Yeah, thank you guys for coming tonight in this snowy snow. I am the resident who initiated the petition to bring this vote of the ordinance from just the select board to RTM, so that you will have 120 people voting on this ordinance instead of just 5. And I did so because I, first of all, noticed that so many people were expressing safety concerns about our downtown area, and they were pleading with the select board to pass this ordinance because of these safety concerns, but it's hard to hear it in the reading of the ordinance, but the ordinance is really, maybe you've already heard this, but it's supposed to be about having a conversation with someone and just saying, hey, do you mind doing this illegal activity not in our downtown safety zones? And if, even though all of those things are in there, like, what is it? Any conduct involving violence, harassment, or threats of physical harm to an individual, those will still lead to arrest. Those will not now, with this ordinance, just end with a $100 ticket if you are harassing someone or being violent, any kind of threats of physical harm to an individual. That will still lead to an arrest with our existing laws. So someone they might also get a ticket, but the idea is that the town, their intent, from what I understand, is that they wanted to have a way to have off-ramps and have some leverage with some community members who are downtown who are threatening people's safety. And the idea is that they will be offered a chance to start a restorative plan, and they can't come back into the downtown area until they have either started a restorative plan or pay the fine. And the thing is that you can already be trespassed from all of those areas that in the trespass map. That's one of the biggest issues, is that all of these things in the ordinance, the police can already do those things, and they already do them. They already go up to people and say, hey, do you mind not doing that? And a lot of the times they say, yeah, okay, I'll go somewhere else. So one of the issues is that this ordinance is unnecessary. The other thing is that the entire ordinance, both sections of it, everything goes through the town manager's office. So all of the appeals, waivers, fees, and hearings and issuance of the designation letters to property managers, this will all go through the town manager's office, an office that has 3 employees. And that administrative burden when I bring that up, the town officials say they're not too concerned about it because they don't think that they will have to be enforcing this ordinance very often. So another sign that perhaps this controversial ordinance is not necessary and we can use our existing laws. The other issue about it not being enforced very often is that leads to unfair, what is this thing? Yeah, what's that called? Big deal, it's a big deal. Discriminatory enforcement. So if we have new laws on our books that we are not planning to enforce all the time, that's just opening us up for liability. That's a great reason to say, well, why are you enforcing these nuisance property laws at this apartment building, but you're not enforcing them at that apartment building? And one of the things that I found in my research is that these types of ordinances have been repealed in many municipalities that have passed them after having to pay large sums to victims of this ordinance, because the part that is not in the conversation so far, that the press has sort of just mentioned with like, oh, by the way, there's also this high response property ordinance. It's kind of like two ordinances in one. And so they don't really have much to do with each other except for one, the first part, the prohibited behaviors, which all of those behaviors are already prohibited. The only thing that they left in the second draft that wasn't already prohibited was the possession of drug paraphernalia. That's the only thing in the prohibited behaviors that is not already illegal, inside the safety zones or outside the safety zones. All those things are already illegal in Brattleboro. And the, shoot, now I forgot what I was gonna say. So the
High response
the
properties.
high response properties, yeah, so the second part, I just lost my train of thought. Sorry, guys.
You can also at any point open it up to discussion and come back if you.
Yeah,
Yeah, we can circle back.
I just wanted to,
There's the nuisances, that,
yeah, I'll just stick to this thing on here.
or the property quality nuisances, is that what you mean?
All right, so I'm just gonna go back to this. So some voices have said this ordinance is a compromise which meets people in the middle and provides off-ramps to the social service organizations. Select Board Member McLaughlin wrote about how the success of this ordinance depends on the social service organizations in our town. But the social service organizations have brought up some major concerns about this, like the lack of availability of recovery beds and access to mental health services. So if this ordinance is designed, since it already is all illegal in our town anyway, if this ordinance is designed to help people get the help they need, then the people who provide that help are saying, we already are maxed out on the help we're giving, so where are the resources? Are you going to pay for, or not you, but who's going to pay for the recovery beds and the treatment? There's a lack of availability of recovery beds, access to mental health services, and as they said, these are tough systems to get into. So adding 9 personnel to the police department and a bunch of work for our town manager's office is a waste of our tax-paying dollars if we're not also adding services to actually provide the help that people are going down these off-ramps to get. For example, there's 159 unsheltered residents of Brattleboro, and Groundworks has 34 beds. So I don't think that there is a lack of people connecting people to help. There's a lack of help. And this ordinance does not provide any additional resources to address that. So what I wanted to say real quickly is that there is basically the one connection I see between the 2 separate ordinances within an ordinance, or that we're creating safety zones in the downtown area and unsafety zones in rental buildings. So what happens in these other municipalities is that the town wants to have leverage over the landlords to say, landlords, you have to deal with this problem. The police are being called all the time. And now you're going to have to pay $800, up to $800 every time emergency services are called to your property. And that what happens in other municipalities is that then landlords respond by threatening to evict people if they call the police, and threatening to raise everyone's rent if anyone calls the police for any reason. And there is no exemption. It lists all the reasons why you would still be designated a high response property, but they tried to add in this domestic violence exemption. That does not show that it works as a solution to the controversy of these nuisance property laws. There is no exemption for hate crimes. There's no exemption for rape, sexual assault. If you call the police for any reason, if you are not a landowner, you will have your housing threatened. So in other municipalities, people have to choose between emergency services and getting the help they need in an emergency and their housing security. And I really do believe that if everybody understood this about this ordinance, we would all agree this is not what Brattleboro needs. It leads to more homelessness. I think, never mind, I'll keep it anonymous, but a landlord said that this ordinance is a guarantee that landlords will not rent to risky tenants.
They shouldn't.
So I think I can wrap it up, and and I'm sure I forgot things, but that is definitely the bulk of it.
Thank you, Christina. So what we're going to do now is we're going to start with folks on Zoom, so make sure we don't forget you. Thanks for participating remotely. And we want to start with anybody who's in District 8 who's participating remotely. If there's any information that you're looking for, any clarification questions, I want to start with that.
Can I just say something real quick? I want it to be really clear that the question that the meeting will be considering is to see if the town will disapprove the ordinance. That is so anything that, this body can talk about whatever the heck it wants to talk about tonight, but on the meeting, you're gonna be asked this question, see if you'll disapprove this ordinance. And so if you stray outside of talking about the ordinance, it's not gonna be germane. I'm not the moderator, so maybe he'll rule it germane, but yeah, Mary likes that. That's Mary.
So just wanted to check if there's anybody participating remotely who would like to ask any clarifying questions or seeking any further information.
Yeah, we have Jessica Dolan.
All right, Jessica.
Hi, everybody. I'm not turning my camera on. I'm sorry.
That's
Just couldn't make it there. I wanted to be there with you. Thanks so much for explaining, Daniel, and for your excellent explanation, Christina. I have a question for clarification. I have a couple. It sounds also like this. Well, first of all, I'll just reveal my bias, which is that this sounds like a, what do you call it? I can't think now, of course. It's unnecessary. Like, we already have things that are legal and illegal in town, and it seems like it's making up extra work. And I'm wondering why, maybe for optics, but it sounds like this would also penalize landowners, because we can't really control who's going to call the cops about our particular property if someone else is causing harm to it. Same thing, it seems like it would penalize landlords in the town, small scale, large scale, whatever. If people just randomly call about something going on that property. The other thing I want to understand is, because I read this article, Peter Elwell in the paper, which I appreciated, but it seems that there's a connection with the pharmaceutical settlement money and this ordinance. And I believe strongly that the pharmaceutical settlement money shouldn't go toward more policing. We already have laws and an excellent police force and an excellent police chief. So I don't understand why we would need to invent another ordinance to give them, I guess, credence to issue more tickets to get more money and hire more police. It just seems like that's what's happening. So that's like 4 or 5 questions. I don't know if anyone wants to answer me there about that.
Daniel?
So I want to just make it super clear. I'm here as one member of the select board. There's another one looming behind me. And I will answer factual clarifications. And I want to just clarify, opioid settlement money has no relationship to this ordinance whatsoever. Opioid settlement money is not funding the police department either. Just clarifying that.
Thank you, Daniel. is response to the questions or?
Clarifying further, yeah.
Great, Franz and then Spoon.
Just, Franz Reichman, the other aforementioned.
Do you want to sit
select
somewhere
board.
other than right
No,
now?
I like having you blocking.
Like, it's pretty weird for the camera.
So,
I can see you. No, I can see
It's
you.
fine.
I can see you. Okay, thank you. Yeah.
we're
Okay.
not collecting fines in this matter in order to finance the police department. That is, we're not anticipating collecting much at all, if any fines. I mean, the purpose of the ordinance, as Christina mentioned, is not to penalize people. It's to foster discussions in real time and encourage changes in behavior in real time. And it's worth noting that in the language of the ordinance, those things must happen first. Can't do anything until you have a discussion with somebody about what they're doing and why they're doing it and what the alternatives would be. And you have to give them an opportunity to change the behavior. So that's the necessary first step in everything related to this ordinance. What we're hoping is that will have people comply with these reasonable standards of behavior, and will mean that we don't need to assess fines. So that
But we already-
certainly it is not designed as a way to collect money, as Jessica was asking about.
Thanks,
I
Franz.
just have to respond to it because we already have laws that people already break, and we already have people, police officers and other professionals in town engaging people in conversations about acceptable and unacceptable behavior, particularly around, drug use, sex trafficking, beating each other up, damaging businesses, all these things. I don't understand. The only thing that the ordinance seems to do is to give town officials more power over normal citizens in order to penalize them for not listening to, I guess I just don't understand why the police can't implement the laws. It sounds like it opens up a door to make that adjudication more subjective and creates a lot more work for y'all, honestly.
Thanks, Jessica. And you know what? Let's try to make sure that everybody gets a chance to speak first, and then we can come back and folks can get a second chance. So Spoon, and then we have Mary, Casey with her hand up on Zoom, and then Susan.
Spoon Agave, District 8. To reiterate, of course, everything mentioned in this ordinance is already on the books. So you're right, there's a lot of confusion. I'm a lot of confused here about what the purpose was. I don't know, and perhaps we can get an explanation, where was this written? Somehow I don't think it was actually members of our select board that sat down and wrote this ordinance. Who did write it? What models were used? Were there any references? Did you look elsewhere to see is that where the models came from? And wherever the models came from, did you look into whether they were successful? So I'm very interested to see where this came from. Secondly, there's stuff that should be in there that is not in there if it were to pass at all. One of the members of the select board supporting this says that we hope it will lead to discussions. Well, if you hope it will lead to discussions, that should be in the ordinance. That in 3 months, 6 months, or whatever, there will be public meetings on what the effects of this might have been, is it working, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So all of that needs to be in. I didn't see in this ordinance any data, measurements, crime statistics, numbers. So we have anything to measure changes against. There is no place we're starting from. This whole thing seems to be coming out of people talking, anecdotal information. We don't know from who, we don't know how many. We hear things like some people are saying, Well, some people are saying all kinds of things. Some people are in favor, some are against, some are this, some are that. But we have nothing really substantial or solid to go on to evaluate why this even came into existence or where it came from. And that's the information I'm looking for.
Thanks, Spoon. I want to make sure we get to Mary who's on Zoom, and then Susan.
Can I answer the factual questions?
If there's something factual, yeah.
Yeah. So the town attorney and the town manager was certainly involved in crafting it. Outside of that and what models they looked at, I can't tell.
Thank you, Daniel. So Mary Casey.
Hi. I keep hearing people talk about that all of these things are already illegal. And one of the things I like about the statute is this is civil. And if you're being charged with a crime, that has a lot of repercussions versus a civil ordinance. So if we can give people a civil off-ramp before the police are forced to charge someone with a crime, that's a lot better option. I do see that the restorative part of the statute, I wanted one part of it to be a little bit better explained. We don't have enough mental health services. We don't have enough addiction services. That's going to be a problem for a plan. I did like the idea of 5 hours of community service, which is in there, because I think we're getting too far into an us versus them. And I think to solve the problem, we've got to bring some of our most vulnerable citizens into the us versus the them. And I think community service, and of course you can't mandate it, is one way to do the us. And I was wondering, either from anyone who knows a little bit about the 5-hour community service, how that was envisioned, if they could speak about that a little bit, because I think that's the way we may become community versus division. Thank you.
Thanks, Mary. Does anyone have a response to how the community service component landed in the ordinance? Franz?
Well, Daniel was speaking before about how the ordinance was written, so it was put in there by the people who wrote the ordinance, who were the town staff, town manager, chief of police. I'm sure all the relevant people had input. So I can't quite say how specific language ended up in there, but I think we can envision a little bit about how the community service part would take place, would exist within the bigger context here. And it would, first of all, there was something that was stated a little bit incorrectly before, which is that all fines would go through the town manager in terms of any forgiveness process. That is not true. The fines would have to go through judicial process in the court system. That's apparently mandatory by our legal system. It would be the no trespass orders that would go through the town manager's office. And so this would apply to restorative justice in the no trespass setting. And what would happen is you go and either talk with the town manager or someone designated by the town manager, who could be a mental health professional, a restorative justice, social worker. I mean, there are all kinds of opportunities there for the town manager to designate the right people to get involved in the process. That's how I would envision it taking place. So I don't know exactly who put the words in there, but that's how it's supposed to work.
Thank you. All right, we're going to pass the microphone to Susan.
Hi, Susan Belleville, District 8. Oh, so many titles to go with that. Business owner, I have an office in downtown Brattleboro. I manage a building in downtown Brattleboro, and I own rental properties. So I will say that initially I found this ordinance really hard to swallow. I found it to be very, very difficult to manage. I've since changed my mind. I have read it over more carefully, and what I see this ordinance doing is providing an opportunity to relieve the law enforcement people from having to interact with individuals who are misbehaving but don't quite rise to the criminal level. There are nuisance factors downtown that are very significant for both business owners, residents, as well as visitors to the community. And this ordinance would alleviate a lot of that by offering interventions prior to legal, tying up law enforcement time, trying to deal with individuals who are really causing a lot of trouble. I think this is an important opportunity, and it may even help a lot of the people that are that are causing these issues. It might help them get a better perspective on their choices so that they interact with the appropriate agencies and get the help that they need to stop and think about what they're doing and maybe not interact so poorly with the rest of the community. So far as the high response property piece of it, that of course was my main focus. I manage a building with 17 apartments, 17 families. It's a community in and of itself. Sometimes they get along, sometimes they don't. Sometimes they bring people into the building that don't get along with anybody. And of course that was a concern to me that we would be getting phone calls. I wouldn't know about it necessarily because tenants don't squeal on each other, but the police may be there and I might not know about it. It's up to me to make sure that it is a safe community for everyone in the building. I don't care, I don't mind, I encourage people to call the police if they're having trouble. It is important for them, and if they don't feel like they can do it, they call me and I'll call the police for them. But the important thing is to keep our buildings safe and to keep our community safe. And I think that this ordinance, even though it probably should be reviewed very seriously within a year at least, I think this is probably the best first steps to changing how people feel downtown, particularly downtown. And I'm really concerned about securing safe environments for young people to hang out downtown and not feel out of place or put out or threatened. Just as a side note, my grandson was accosted by somebody in the parking lot for money. And I was very upset. And I tried to intercede on that, and the guy ran off before I could get there.
Thank you, Susan. HB in the back.
Hi everybody, HB Lizito, District 8. Vermont has led on restorative justice for over 30 years already. It's a very well-known process that we have in Vermont. I feel like this ordinance is trying to recreate a system that we already have. It's a very poor approximation of a really functional system that we already have. There's many off-ramps that already exist with people who are full-time experts in doing restorative justice in our community every day. There's a very robust diversion program. There's a pre-charge program. There's nothing that's precluding people from already having these kinds of restorative experiences in our town. And in fact, the experts who work in restorative justice every day in our town have said that they don't support this ordinance. They won't do this work in this way. It's putting the kind of power in the hands of people who are not experts. I want our town manager to do what he's an expert in, managing the town, not deciding about restorative justice processes when we have people in our community who really do that every single day. And working with the state's attorney. There's a lot of people in this system already doing this work all the time. It's trying to recreate that system in a way that's redundant and doesn't have the thoughtfulness that has been baked into that system for 30 years in Vermont.
Thank you. Mary.
Well, I guess my first question is, then why isn't there a coordination? If this system has been tried and true and been around for a long time, how is it that we have this number of people who are who run afoul, if you will, of our system and are not able to access the services. That to me is the stumbling block, because it's clearly, and we talk about some of the people downtown who are repeat offenders, if you will. They've been through both the criminal justice system and some of them, not all, but some in other restorative practices, and it hasn't made a difference. So aside from the ordinance, there is that issue of where's the coordination between, something that we know can work and that we know does a good job, and yet the people we're talking about, we are not able to access it.
Would anybody like to answer that question? Anybody who hasn't yet spoken want to answer it, and then we'll. Yeah, go ahead, Alex.
Hi, Alex Fisher, District 8, also Moreland Ave with Daniel Clip. Hello.
You share a logo.
We do. I think one of the things I'm hearing is specifically, like, we're all concerned. We all care that people are suffering. That suffering is coming out in behaviors that make some people feel threatened, that make some people feel concerned, that make a lot of us feel both. And what I'm also hearing is we don't have capacity for more services currently. So it's not about coordinating people to go talk to Groundworks. It's that there aren't more beds available, and that's why people are on the street. And so I'm curious, I know Franz, you were kind of being very vague about the organizations and the services to be connected to, and like, we're a very small town. We know each other, we are neighbors, we know the handful of organizations in town, and those handful of organizations continuously say, we are beyond capacity. And so I don't think it's a coordination issue of people knowing that they can go to Groundworks or knowing that they can call HCRS. It's that Groundworks doesn't have more beds, HCRS doesn't have more staff. And so what are we doing? Not necessarily to tell people more times to go talk to them, but actually providing more response, more space, and more capacity to respond to those behaviors. That's my understanding of what the coordination issue is not that people don't know about the 5 organizations or 10 organizations in town. It's that those organizations continuously say, we are doing our best, we are so beyond our capacity, how can you support us expanding that capacity, because we all care.
Thank you. Thanks, Fisher. Anybody else in the room who hasn't yet had a chance to speak who would like to say something? And if you could, I like how people have been saying your full name and your district. That's really helpful. Thanks.
Virginia Goodman, District 8. I had a question about what happens if someone can't pay these fines. Does it automatically become, because I'm guessing that most of the people who are going to be incurring the fines won't be able to pay them. I couldn't pay them. So, and again, where is the staff? Where is the staff? I work in the schools. It is an understaffed universe. It's not for lack of will. If you have a heartbeat, you can get a job, basically. But where's the staff to do this? Both the community center idea, where's that staff? And the expanded services for these people, where's that staff? And then where's the staff gonna live? Because there is no housing. So I guess the only question that's really answerable is what happens when someone can't pay.
Anybody have a response to that question about what happens if someone can't pay? And then I saw the other hands. Christina?
Yeah. The police department said that it will go to collections and affect your credit if you cannot pay the fines.
No address. They don't have
Yeah, I
an
mean,
address.
that's also.
So
tired. Well, I mean, if we're talking really, I mean, I live in District 8. I know downtown. I know, like, if this goes into effect, I know the players basically who are gonna be incurring fines, and I don't think they're worried about their credit. You know?
No, they're not.
So I just wonder, what is the practical, there must be some sort of mechanism put in place. If you don't pay a fine, what happens?
You know what, I thought about that too. You're gonna try to get money out of a stone.
Yes.
What are your plans on collecting and who absorbs that? Where does it go? I'm sure, you know, when you write these fines, they're gonna have to be allocated from somewhere, which means either something's either gonna be cut or increased. So that being said, I don't know if they factor that into the equation. It's sort of like your health bill. You go to the doctor, you don't have insurance. Who pays? It goes to collection. Sure, okay, I'm homeless. What do I care about credit? Well, I just want to hear Daniel real quick.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking through the ordinance, looking for a direct answer to that question, and I don't find a clear answer to it.
I have an answer.
From the
A
ordinance?
further answer, yes.
Yeah, great.
It's not written in the ordinance,
Oh,
but
okay.
it's, I've been asking a lot of questions, and I'd like to relay the information that I found in the last 2 months to you guys. And if it doesn't, what I have heard from social service orgs is that these fines will actually trigger more social service needs in our community. So like SEVCA or HCRS or people who have clients who are now banned from the downtown area, they will now have social service needs to be able to gain access back to the downtown area. So they will have people helping them file appeals and waivers, and they will need people helping them to pay these fees.
Thank you. We're gonna turn to Tom and then Mary.
Tom Osikowski, District 8 Rep. This is about the actual article which Daniel quoted. I'm wondering, and the moderator's not here, so we don't actually know, but there's probably someone who's more knowledgeable than me. Will we be able to modify that article at all and potentially disprove a section of the ordinance, but not the entire ordinance?
I don't believe so.
Okay.
But I may be wrong. There is a lot.
You are correct, Daniel.
Yeah.
It is not amendable at the special RTM.
Okay. All right, thank you.
It's up or down.
Thank you.
Down.
And Mary.
Mary Del Priori, District 8, and since all of this, or almost all of it, is already illegal, but we have the crime that we have, and we have the situation we have, clearly we need to do something different. We know and we wish we had more resources because we're Brattleboro and we're empathetic and we're community minded, but we're broke. We're busted. We just did the 14% for, tax for the schools. Wish we could do more, but we don't have the resources. Cities with deeper pockets than Brattleboro have tried and failed with this. At some point, we need to put on our own oxygen mask before we can save anybody else. I feel like we've been really patient with this whole thing. We've all seen the crime rate raise in terms of break-ins, in terms of being harassed, and we need to do something, and this is something. And if it keeps them away from downtown so that we can get our community back, because we are citizens of Brattleboro. Like, we need to be considered as well. I have empathy for this population, but we have limited resources, and we tax-paying citizens, need to benefit from our resources. It can't all go to the homeless. It needs to go to our library. It needs to go to our roads and the new fire truck. It just can't all go here. So it sounds like it's a step in the right direction. Also, for those landlords, and I'm a landlord too, who do not want to provide a safe spot, who do allow the calls to come all the time, they should pay so we don't have to, because we're picking up the bill for them. For those landlords who don't care who's there, who don't care about a safe situation, who don't even care for a safe situation in their own apartment building, but also their neighbors or the elementary school near it, they need to be held financially responsible. We can't keep on picking up the tab for them. So.
Thank you. Let's take, if there's one or two more comments on this topic about the ordinance, and then we'll take a 2-minute stretch break, and then we'll come back and talk about the budget. Anybody who has not yet spoken, either on Zoom, let's not neglect our folks who are participating remotely. Anybody who would like to chime in from Zoom? Welcome, Representative Molly Burke from District 8. Great to have you.
Sorry, I was at a all-day fiscal briefing at the State House.
Well, welcome home
Put
to
some of the
Brattleboro.
budget in context.
Yeah.
I just want to make
And if you could just introduce yourself.
Yeah, Ann Morrodell, District 8. I'm really clear on the 12th. When we vote yes, it's actually voting it down. Is that correct?
Don't ask me that kind of question.
Yeah. So a vote
Moderator will keep us
yes,
straight.
a vote yes is actually a vote no.
Actually, yes means no. That's
Yes to disapprove.
Yes to disapprove.
kind of an oxymoron.
Yeah.
And I see hands for folks who have. Oh, did you want to say something?
Yeah, Stu Copans, I don't know what district I'm in because they changed it. It might be 9.
Yeah.
But, people are sort of talking and saying, well, it's the 129 unhoused homeless people who are responsible. It's the people who are addicted who are responsible. Do we have any sense, in fact, of who we're talking about and what their issues or problems are?
Anybody have an answer to that question?
Yes. No. Is the answer to that question. You could look at, so one of the projects that the police department's been involved in the last I'd say the last year, is working with the state on some sort of like data analysis, kind of better data quality kind of work. And so there has been a few opportunities where we've looked at 20 people who are the highest kind of like
Consumers.
no, that's the wrong word. So these are people that have had the most contact with the police department. So it is not the 20 most criminal, they're not the 20 most arrested, just simply the 20 people who've had the most contact with the police department over a certain period of time. And so I've seen that data like 3 different times with like a different kind of like couple of weeks or a month or what have you interval. And I can tell you from having looked at that data, people are from all kinds of walks of life. So that's all. That's what I can say from a data point of view. I can't speak to the intent of the people that wrote this ordinance as to who they thought they were aiming this ordinance at, but the ordinance from a legal point of view is generally applicable.
Thank you. I want to call on people who have not yet had a chance to speak. So we'll hear from you if you could introduce yourself.
Yes, Will Cram, District 8. Let's be honest here. This ordinance targets the homeless, the hungry, the mentally ill, and those suffering from a substance use disorder. And we should be offering these people help, not giving them a ticket with a $100 fine. I'll give you an example. I was walking through Prospect Hill Cemetery the other day, and a young man came in, crouched behind a large tombstone, started disrobing, and started to shoot up. That's not within the coverage of the ordinance because it's not one of these protected zones. That man does not need a police officer giving him a citation to pay a $100 civil fine. He needs treatment. Where can he go? There are 2 residential treatment facilities in this state, and there's a waiting list of weeks or months for a bed. You know, the ordinance is not the solution. It's going to discriminate against the most vulnerable people in this community.
Thank you, Will. I saw another hand. Somebody who had not yet spoken.
And we have Jessica Dolan.
Jessica already had
And
a
then
chance.
Molly also.
Yeah, Representative Molly Brook.
Yeah, it just strikes me in listening to this conversation is a lot of the problems are problems that, really the legislature sort of created by ending the motel program, the way that it ended. I mean, that's a big issue. The other thing is our lack of mental health, to your point, mental health treatment in the state and lack of, poverty, just so many different things that are really things that could be solved at the state level with some money. So there's again, the issue of how do we take these issues and solve them? And we're facing now a situation where we're going to have to make sure that everything that we pass this session will pass muster with the governor, who doesn't really want to raise any money. So it's going to be very, very complicated how we deal with a lot of these issues. But I think that these are issues that need to be discussed at the state level as well as the local issue. You know, the drug issues, homelessness, housing is big on the list of things that we need to address.
Thank you.
One Jessica.
Is there somebody?
Yeah, she's been waiting.
It's Jessica and HB. All right, I want to just one last call for anybody who has not yet had a chance to speak. All right, let's have Jessica and then HB. And then we'll go into a 2-minute break.
Hi, guys. I didn't say before that I'm also a member of District 8, and I really appreciate what my neighbor Will just said, because what I've observed from living in this area is that it's not in the proposed banning area of downtown, and there's a lot of people really suffering all around every day, and they need a place to go. So my question is, once people are banned from downtown and have fines that they can't pay, where do you expect them to go? Are they going to come more over here into Prospect Cemetery? And like, where do people expect them to go?
I have an answer to that.
Go ahead.
A couple days before the ordinance was passed, I sat down with the town manager who authored the ordinance, and I asked him that exact question. If this just asks people to go do their illegal behavior outside of the trespass zone, should I start to expect, well, I said, what's your plan for when that illegal behavior is outside of the trespass zone? And he said to me, nothing. And I said, okay, so I live basically downtown next to an empty lot and next to DMI. Should I start to expect seeing more people down here? And he said, yeah, maybe. And just last week, my neighbor called me and said, did you send someone over to my house? Because as if I had sent them to prove a point, I did not. I'm not sending panhandlers to your homes. But she said, I pulled into my driveway, got out of my car, and somebody asked me for money. And also, never seen anyone camping in DMI and people are now camping in DMI. So it is creating zones where it will be enforced here, and what happens outside of that is not part of at least the town manager's plan when this ordinance was passed.
Thank you. So HB, and then we're going to take a 2-minute break.
I share your concerns, Mary, about cost, and I don't know that we'll be able to talk about cost at the special RTM because I don't know if that will be germane or not. There's no cost associated with this ordinance, so I just want to say a couple of things about cost now, which I feel like there is a very troubling to me dichotomy between human services and police, and I think we can talk about that for hours, but I just wanted to give a couple numbers. One is in our budget, which, maybe I should say this maybe for next, but I'll go really briefly. In the budget, we've allocated 2% of the town budget, which is about $461,000 this year, to fund, 40 plus human services organization. The increases that have been proposed to the police budget are about $2.1 million. And so that's a big part of the increase that we're looking at for this year. So I'm really interested in talking about costs and keeping our town affordable for all of us. I wanted to give a couple numbers to those things.
Yeah, $1 million of that is the police presence downtown.
Mm-hmm.
So $1 million of that budget is because, what are we doing?
Right.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for your respectful participation and listening. And I've been taking notes for myself, and I'm hoping that representatives to town meeting will take into consideration what we've heard or what you've heard on the 12th. We'll take a 2-minute break, and then we'll come back and spend about 20 minutes to talk about the budget. All right. Well, we're going to shift gears now, and we're going to talk a little bit about the budget. We just have about 15 minutes for this conversation, so this is a beginning. For some people, this is a continuation of a conversation. For others, this may be a beginning. But wanted to take advantage of this moment because the budget is being created now. By the time this month, Daniel can remind us what date, the timeline for this, but by the time representative town meeting comes around in March, there's going to be a fully cooked budget, and the question is, we're going to either vote it up, or representatives, the town meeting will vote it either up or down. So this is really an important moment for people, residents of Brattleboro, to give input to the budget as it's being crafted. And it's great we have a couple of select board members here with us.
I just want to point out that the budget is amendable at town meeting. It's not a straight up or down
Oh,
vote
okay.
on the budget itself.
Thank you for
There are
that.
restrictions on how it can be amended, but it can be amended.
Oh, thank you for that clarification. Correction.
Well, you can amend the amount, but not what it's spent. You
right.
Spent on.
You can't say what it's spent on.
That's one of the restrictions, yes.
All right.
All right, so
great.
we're gonna do the same thing. Daniel's gonna share some thoughts. Christina will give you, if you could maybe make it really short, your thoughts, and then we'll, Christina help organize this meeting, and then we'll open up to everybody.
Okay, so this bit of presentation will be less, it's more difficult for me to do this, is what I'm trying to say. The ordinance is like, here, I'm gonna read what it says. This requires me to kind of interpret and to provide you with a frame of reference. The budget is large, it is a large document, there are many lines to it. So what I did, I think the headline that I would wanna take away, if I hadn't already been aware of the town budget right now, is it's much bigger than in previous years, and the amount of taxes that need to be raised to fund it are much higher than in previous years. So that's the headline, and then I would say, why is the next question, right? And so I want to kind of walk you through some big changes in the budget, and then maybe hear what your thoughts and questions are. And then I think it's also worth pointing out from a timeline point of view, really it was important that we spent a good amount of time talking about the ordinance, because that's the business next Thursday. The budget is something that is being worked on right now in the select board meetings and between select board meetings. There's an opportunity for comment and amending right now and amending specifically what's in it and what money is spent on right now. Between now and like mid to end of January, we need to get it wrapped up by the end of January in order to be able to warn representative town meeting for the third Saturday after the first Tuesday in March, which is like the 20-something this year. So the big things I want to tell you about from the budget is I want to talk about changes, and I'm going to focus on dollar changes. So in the revenue side of the budget, there is a loss of $305,000 from solid waste garbage bag revenue. That is a negative number in the revenue side. There is a loss of fund balance, which is like our rainy day fund that we kind of, well, that's not true. Anyway, this is why it's more difficult. The fund balance piece, compared to the previous year's budget, we have lost a significant amount of money that we were able to put on the revenue side. So because there's less revenue able to be generated through a diverse array of things, that is why property taxes then see a higher than normal raise. Because the actual budget itself, as far as the base budget goes, so John, the town manager, has been in the habit of speaking about a base budget for the last couple of cycles. This is John's second budget cycle. And the way he thinks about that is like, what is the amount of money that would need to be raised in order to just, do what we do, right? And the base budget this year also included a decision that the select board made in September or August or September, I forget when, about funding additional members of the police department, some of whom are regular sworn officers, one of which is a data analyst, not one of which, an additional position which is a data analyst, 4 positions which are being called the BRAT team, which is the Brattleboro Resource Assistance Team, which is a pilot project about working only in downtown. Those 4 officers are unarmed and will primarily be working to kind of serve the community. I don't know, we can talk more about that. The police chief can talk more about that. And then in addition to that, there's also a position that was labeled a peer support specialist, which they've already hired for. And the person they hired is this guy that used to work at Turning Point, Justin Johnston, and he is primarily working with folks around substance uses. Okay, so did I get sidetracked? Maybe a little. On the expenditure side of the budget, that's where we see a lot of change. Okay, and so I want to kind of walk you through from the largest dollar change. I was going to say from the largest to the smallest. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to walk through some of the large dollar changes. Okay, so the biggest one is an extra $742,500 going towards capital. So capital is equipment or buildings, typically, infrastructure. And so that's the total capital budget for this year is $2.5 million. And then there's a whole list of projects and equipment as to what the town intends to do with that money, and you can find that on our budget page. The second highest increase is health insurance. Everyone is probably aware of how awful the health insurance world is. The third highest increase is an additional $538,234 to the staff salaries line for the police department. So Mary kind of mentioned about, I think, NHB as well, about like increased funding for the police department. I was just kind of talking about it a bit there. Some of that shows up there, I would say. And then more benefits, increases, retirement, social security. And then we start to get into staff salaries for public works and fire, $134,000 for public works, $121,000 additional for fire. And then after that, human services, so it increased by $93,000 compared to last year's budget. And so I could kind of go down that list, but I think that's like the high level, like why this, that's almost the high level of why this budget is larger than other years. The big thing that actually isn't even in our base budget was the cost for solid waste, so trash, recycling, and all of the ways that that gets broken out. And there's some revenue stuff and there's some expense stuff on that side. The select board just made a decision last week? Something like that. Time is weird. And we opted for a contract with Casella that includes trash pickup, recycling pickup, compost pickup, and a few other things as well. But it's the contract that most most kind of replicates what we have right now. It's not exactly the same as what we have right now. It's a little less frequent in some cases. And we found that, we did this kind of RFQ process to try and get interested parties that were interested in serving the town's, trash and recycling needs. We had one respondent. We engaged with that respondent for a period of about a year in contract negotiations. Pretty tough to negotiate a contract when you've only got one respondent. The town administration, kept reporting back to the select board about how that was going in executive session. We heard a lot about it. We gave the feedback that we gave, and we tried the best we could to get the best deal for the town, but it was a pretty brutal increase from the old contract with Triple T. And so really there were kind of three options. Option one was like, hey, stop providing these services. I wasn't interested in that. I don't know what the others think, but I do kind of know. Or provide these services differently, right? So stop providing trash pickup. And I gotta tell you, the contract option that we had for no trash pickup was cheaper, but it was still about twice as much as what we used to pay with Triple T, and it was much worse. And so the third option was, okay, something that kind of looks a little bit more like what we had with Triple T, but the price was, I think, probably almost like 3 times what we used to pay. And that's pretty awful. That's like, as far as the general fund goes, that is a massive increase. and that is how we arrive at this 22% increase in property taxes. So when the town manager brought all that information forward and when the select board made its decision to go with that particular contract, we have also said to the town manager, I'd like you to go back to the drawing board, talk with the staff, and see if you can come up with an alternative budget that is 10% lower or 5% lower, like two different versions really. When we get those budgets back, we will see what the implications of those 10% lower and 5% lower budgets are, and we'll need to really wrestle with the hard choices around that. And so that's where I think public feedback is absolutely critical. We need to know what the community wants. And so you need to be reading the newspaper, coming to select board meetings, being aware of what is in the budget, what is potentially cut out of the budget, sharing your thoughts on whether that's acceptable to you or not, and communicating that to the select board and the town administration. And we need to do that work in December and January. Okay, so what are we on today? December 4th?
Yeah.
Thank you. So, not next week, because we're doing this town meeting, but the week after that, we have a regular select board meeting on the 19th, I guess. At that meeting, we expect to see these alternative budget proposals. You'll hear about the impacts to level of service. I don't know what it looks like right now. If you don't want to come to that meeting, that's fine. You can still get that information. It'll be published on like the Friday before that meeting. So what's that, like the 15th or something? You can find it on the town website, and you can weigh in with your thoughts. So that is our budget situation. I'm happy to try and answer questions, but there's a lot.
Yeah, and I think that actually, since we only have 7 minutes till 7 till 7,
a lot of questions.
let's just keep this to questions, and then Daniel has invited folks, remind us that we can show up at select board meetings and share our opinions there, and there's the newspapers where we can share our opinions and with our neighbors. So we'll start with questions, and if you can identify yourself and your district, that would be great.
Sorry, Mary. That's okay. Bill Harvey, District 8. I recognize that in the paper, the budget with Casella went from around 900,000 to 1.5 million. Am I correct?
Not quite.
That's close.
The one that the option that we chose to go for, it was around 1.3 something.
1.3. So what I want to point out is that with Triple T, which I have frequented, we seem to be under the impression that we're doing three things. That we're picking up trash, that we're picking up recycling, and that we're picking up compost. I think it would be very beneficial for the town to find out concerning the recycling. Recycling was extremely expensive for Triple T. What they tried to do is use the railway system for the breakdown and the recycling of cardboard, plastic, glass, so on and so forth. It was extremely cost inhibitive. Realistically, I think we could save the town money using Costello by clarifying the fact that really our trash and recycling, sorry to say, is going to the same place.
Exactly.
And we could have one pickup for trash and recycling and another one for compost, unless we can verify the fact that recycling is actually happening. Otherwise, it's a moot point.
Thank you.
Questions? We haven't heard from you yet.
No, Gina Farrow, the District 8. I was just gonna say that Casella is publicly traded, so they have to answer to their investors. And what else was I gonna say? And with taxes going up, I personally know of a few families, couples, maybe their kids are gone, gone meaning grown up and out of the house, pretty deep pocketed, can't afford the taxes, and have moved to New Hampshire or elsewhere, because they just can't stay here anymore. So what's gonna happen when people get slammed with this tax increase and can't afford it? People who are normally deep pocketed and earn some decent money. So.
Thank you, Gina. Folks who have their hands up, any question? Either of you have questions?
I have a question.
Okay, Mary.
My question is, it rolls off of hers, which is when you're figuring out this education budget, which came in at 14, I know you weren't, but when we got it, you know, which came to 14%, so the state is involved with this as well. And now you're looking at this budget for 22%, then we're gonna reassess our house. Then the December 1st letter said something about the education going up again next year, like 5.1. My point is, when you're coming to these calculations, do you look at the population and do you figure out what we can afford? I mean, that's a serious question. Have you taken the time to see what's the median income in Brattleboro, Vermont is like 42,000? And we've got this growing poverty level. We know the problem. So has anybody actually taken the time to see if we could afford it? And with that in mind, as you look at the residents and how to grow the town and what we can afford or not, what's your 5-year plan? Because I'm with her. I don't know if we're expected to sell a house and have wealthy people come in, or if we're gonna start a commune. I mean, like, what's the plan in 5 years or 10? And that's serious.
Would you like me to answer?
I'd love you to answer.
No, which one?
Any of them. Did you figure out how much we could afford before you raised taxes?
I didn't write the budget, not my budget, town administration's budget. The process begins with the town administration, lasts a couple of months, and then comes to the select board. In this iteration, we did a kind of like initial select board meeting, and then we had a budget open house. The budget is based on what it costs to run town operations.
So
It's not based on what the town can afford, it's based on how much it costs to run town operations.
All right, so that answers one question.
Yeah, that's probably about the only question from all of your questions I can actually answer.
So does that mean there's no vision for the future? You're just throwing it out there?
Well, I think that's a bigger question, and I don't think I am, as one person, able to answer that.
Let's see if we can get in one more. I want to see if we can get another question in, or yeah. So Alex.
Great, Alex Fisher again. Hi, a giant budget nerd, in case folks didn't know that. 2 questions, mostly Daniel, sorry.
That's okay.
Ahead of time. One is, you did a great job of naming the loose numbers for like the top increases, except I think the health insurance increase.
Did I get it wrong?
No, I just didn't hear a number.
Oh.
I was curious. You were like, and number 2 is health insurance. And not that I'm gonna advocate for cutting it, I'm just trying to understand.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of one of
And then the other question I have is, what is that increase in capital expenditure that is the number 1 expense going towards next year? Why is it a $750,000
That's a great
increase?
question.
What's that
I can
for?
actually answer both those questions.
Thanks.
So the dollar increase for health insurance is $540,561. So going from 1.9 to 2.4, nearly 2.5.
Yeah, thank you. That makes
The
sense in the order.
Capital, and we got, don't make me
Inflation.
talk over you, please.
Inflation.
Yeah. The capital, so in projects, street paving and improvements, 475,000. Bicycle infrastructure, 20,000. Bridges and large culverts, that's new, 100,000. Retaining walls, 100,000, that's also new. Williams and Guilford Street and Cotton Mill Hill intersection engineering, 180,000. Sidewalk repair and replacement, 200,000. The Kiwanis shelter roof, 37,500. And then vehicles, there's 4 vehicles for fire, a car, 75 grand. We have 2 funds, one for a fire engine. So it's like every year we put in a certain amount of money. So 185 grand for that. One for ambulances, 141,723 for that. 12 leading KG, year 4 of 4, 35 grand. Computer equipment replacement, 50 grand. Three vehicles for the police department. They're all cars, all coming in at 89,000. DPW has 4 vehicles. Ooh, I might get some of this wrong. 220,000 for something. 161,000 for another thing. 54,000 for another thing, and 160,000 for another thing. Those are pretty specialist vehicles, and I don't want to pretend I know what they
I
are.
was like, that's more than 740. Okay.
And then 55,000 for Rec and Parks for a F-350 truck.
Okay. My
Total in
follow-up-
2.5 million.
Got it. Thank you. Okay. Because what I thought might be happening, and so the other question is, where is the money for the second police station, the substation, coming from? Because it's not a capital. I was like, ooh, that's about the cost of this capital expense of.
So the
a building.
CDBG money, Community Development Block Grant, got bolstered by a maturing fund called UDAG, which we found behind the couch cushions a couple of years ago, and it was like, I don't know, $3 million or something. We added that. We really looked into, could those monies be used in an unrestricted way? They can. They have served all of their purposes and gone through all of the things that they need to do. We added that money to what is now being called the revolving loan fund. It used to be called program income. It is federal pass-through money for the most part, but now it also includes this UDAG money. Patrick Mullen can give you a whole spiel on it. And so we had a much higher balance in that fund than we've had in a really long time. And we've used some of that money to pay for things that we wouldn't typically have used CDBG money for, because that was either for housing or economic development. And so the transportation center, police substation plan, and public bathrooms is funded out of that. So not taxpayer money. Also, it's not going to revolve. I think when we call it the revolving loan fund, it's
not, the police aren't paying it back to that fund.
So some of the things that we use that money for does, get used as loans, and they do come back slowly.
But that's, I guess the short end is the substation is not at all represented in this upcoming budget.
Correct.
None of that 22% increase.
Nor the bathrooms.
Nor the bathrooms are in this number. Okay.
Although that money could get spent on something else, right?
That is.
So
we already made the decision. We already spent it. We already spent it, but we already said we're doing that, and that's not in this budget.
I'm seeing there are multiple hands still up. It's past 7 o'clock. There's a snowstorm out there. I'd like to make sure that people are able to get home at a reasonable hour and we stick to the time that we advertise. If folks want to chat on your way out, and also remembering that you have contact information for the select board members online.
I'd be happy to stick around and chat with a small group of people if anyone wanted to chat.
Great.
Cleaning those bathrooms.
Could I just announce my office hours that people can come to?
Sure, go, if you want to stay a couple of minutes, we have a couple of
4:30 to
announcements.
6:30, Friday mornings, 8 to 10, come and talk to me at the works, I'll be happy to listen to whatever you have to say.
Thank you. And we have 2 more announcements. Representative Burke?
Yeah, I would just like to say, we have a lot of problems in this town and we're trying to solve them. But I was at the bridge dedication yesterday, the new Finsdale Bridge, the General John Stark Bridge, and it is a beautiful thing. And if you go to the Hinsdale side of it, it comes in, I didn't really, I've been watching it from the Brattleboro, there's this beautiful curve and then it goes up high and this beautiful, view of downtown Brattleboro. And it's very inspiring. So, I think we need to also, sort of, while we're in the midst of this difficult thing, to think about the value of our town and what a wonderful place it is. And hopefully we can get some of these problems resolved too.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm just gonna close out, just as a reminder for everyone, that you can be caucused in by arriving at Academy School 1212, 24 at 5 p.m. I want to thank you. Any additional questions, email, but I will be sending out additional information on how if anyone wants to become an RTM member. You will get your email this week. That I promise, so I'll come to your house.
Thank you all for coming.
Thank everybody.
Have a good night.
Very much. See you on the 12th.
Oh, yeah.
Thanks for being here on Zoom too.